I'm about to burn my aunt's house to the ground. Because I'm too lucky. I stink of gasoline, I'm fucking terrified I'm going to die, but burning my aunt's house down is my only option. For context, when I was born, my mother died in the birthing pool. I was born inside scarlet water, swimming around in my mother's blood. Dad called me an omen, but he did say that I was a happy baby. I came out silent and smiling. I didn't cry until the paramedics pulled me out of the birthing pool, the warm slurry of my mother's entrails. According to my father, he was told that my mother just popped. She was healthy, and I was healthy. I was ready to be born, and there were 0 complications. And then, my mother was gone. Dad said there were no hard feelings, and he did love me, but he couldn't be near me anymore. Apparently, household appliances would just kind of explode out of nowhere. But again, I was a happy baby. The microwave blew up, but I found an extra chicken nugget in my dinner. Dad fell down the stairs and hurt his back, and on the way to the emergency room, there was candy in the ambulance. Dad didn't even say goodbye. I was 5 years old. I remember him holding me at arm's length all the way to my aunt's house. On the way, he tripped and bruised his face, but I landed on a mattress on someone's lawn. When we reached Aunt M's place, I thought it was just for the afternoon, but Dad ran away before she could open the door. I waited for him to come back, but my father was gone. I started a new life, and it wasn't so bad. Even if Aunt M refused to let me near my cousins. She split the lounge into 2. Jonas and Jesse were on the side with the TV and the toys, and I was on my own little side, with my own books and toys. Jonas stood on his tiptoes one day, trying to pass me one of his toys. He told me that his mommy was scared of me, and considered me as bad luck. His words were only reinforced when Aunt M came into the room and freaked out, violently pulling my cousin away from me. To her credit, my aunt still smiled politely at me, even if both of us knew it was fake. Aunt M dragged Jonas upstairs and bathed her son thoroughly, as if scrubbing me off of him. When he came back, sopping wet and draped in a towel, I expected my cousin to follow in his mother's footsteps. Instead, he waved and mouthed, "Sorry," before his mother gently turned his head away from me. Jessie, meanwhile, ignored her mother, sitting as close to me as possible to prove my aunt wrong. I thought Jessie was right and maybe my aunt was being too strict. But then the TV blew up. After that incident, the 4 of us were separated for my cousin's safety. I wasn't allowed near my cousins. Growing up, the rules were relaxed slightly. Instead of staying behind the white gate, I was transferred into my very own room. I could leave and enter any time I wanted, but only when Jesse and Jonas were not in the house. But my cousins refused to lock me out of their lives despite me almost indirectly killing them. The 2 grew curious about my separation as we got older and made it their goal to sneak into my room. At 8 years old, I was sitting on my bed watching Pokémon. It was summer, and I remember the sticky heat baking the back of my neck. Aunt M had opened the window and left me popsicles on a tray, so I was slowly making my way through them, shaking my head to get rid of brain freeze. I was mindlessly chewing on a popsicle stick when Jessie's head appeared at the window. Her lips split into a wide grin. Anxiety immediately started to prick in my gut. I was strictly told to stay away from my cousins, but they were making it increasingly harder, especially as a lonely 8-year-old whose only friends were the cartoons I watched on the TV. I couldn't help myself, slipping off of my bed and rushing over to the window, where Jessie was balancing on her father's ladder. Even as a kid, I knew exactly what was going to happen. Jessie. I hugged her when she wrapped her arms around me, giggling. I had to guess that she was mid-sugar rush. When I leaned out of the window, I glimpsed Jonas teetering on the 3rd step. "What are you doing?" I couldn't resist a laugh. but I was very aware of the wobbling ladder swaying back and forth. "Shh," she whispered. "We've come to save you." Jonas groaned loudly. "You're not supposed to tell him the surprise." I reached out to steady the ladder, and my cousin shot me a grateful smile. "Surprise?" Jessie nodded, pressing one fist over her heart. I had to grab for the ladder again when she wobbled, her eyes going wide. "Whoa!" Jessie shot her brother a glare. "You're not holding it correctly." "Am too." Jessie stamped on the ladder. "If I fall, I'm telling Mom." "And I'm telling Mom this was your idea." Jessie stomped again. "I'm the captain, and you do what I say. Hold the ladder." When Jonas responded with a grumbled yell, I laughed, tightening my grip on the ladder. I loved my cousins more than anything in the world. From the second I walked into their lives, they never judged or belittled me. I was just another kid they wanted to play with. Jessie turned back to me, mocking a serious face. I remember the playful glitter in her eyes, freckles dancing across her cheeks. "Do you swear to protect the identity of the Sunny Pirates?" "I do," I said. Jessie curled her lip, motioning for me to copy her. "You need to swear." "I swear," I said, punching my heart with real passion, just like I saw on my favorite show. "I swear to protect the identity of the Sunny Pirates." "I do too," Jonas yelled from below us. Jessie grinned. "Do you want to help us dig for buried treasure?" In the fleeting second it took me to say yes, I watched my cousin slowly fall backwards, her expression unwavering. She was laughing, like she wasn't falling to her death, caught in a whirlwind of hair. I don't remember crying out, or even moving, when Jessie toppled off of the ladder and hit the rough concrete of our driveway with a sickening smack. Jonas started screaming. When I managed to move my body and force myself to peer down, a slow, spreading pool of red stemmed around Jessie's crumpled form. When I twisted around, I glimpsed a quarter at my feet. I didn't move again for a long time, standing in the same spot, my legs aching as I watched a blur of flashing red and blue lights take my cousin away. If I moved, something bad was going to happen. So, I didn't move. I stayed rooted to the spot until around midnight, when the door slammed shut downstairs and my light flickered off. I could hear my aunt screaming, and I blocked her out, burying my head in my knees and slamming my hands over my ears. I was half asleep when my door flew open. I was expecting my aunt, but it was Jonas. I could barely see him, his face cast in shadow. He was in front of me in 3 strides, and I remember being terrified of the hollow look in his eyes. "Jessie is okay," Jonas said softly, startling me by pulling me into a hug. "See?" He broke into sobs, his tears soaking through my shirt. "You're not bad luck." He squeezed me tighter, and I felt myself crumple. "You brought Jessie back." But even as I hugged my cousin, the lights flickered. I looked up, watching as the glass fixture swung violently, and yet there was no wind, not even a summer breeze to nudge it. I was suddenly far too aware of the ornate chain creaking with every swing, my gut twisting into knots. These things had always scared me. M's house was an antique collector's wet dream, but these things were ancient. Before I could react, the fixture snapped, and I shoved my cousin out of the way, stumbling backward just as the light crashed to the floor, shattering into dust. For a moment I stood, waiting for Jonas to stand directly in the glass and cut open his foot, but he didn't move, letting out a breath. Whoa. I dropped to my knees in a frenzy, trying to clean it up, when I noticed that the glass wasn't cutting my hands. I was grasping for it, scooping it up without thinking, and somehow every shard missed me. I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed a splinter of silver and dragged it across my palm. Nothing. No blood, no scar, not even a scrape. "Are you a witch?" Jonas's mouth curled into a slight smile when I looked up at him. "You're like a superhero," he whispered excitedly. "Can you, move things with your mind?" "Jonas?" M's voice startled both of us, and I pretended not to notice my cousin suddenly backing away from me, his expression morphing from excitement to disgust. But Jonas was a bad actor, shooting me a grin when he thought his mother wasn't looking. I had to guess that she'd made him promise to stay away from me, and I couldn't blame her. Immediately, Jonas tried to say he broke the light fixture, catapulting into a semi-coherent lie, which went something like, "I didn't mean to break it. I was throwing a ball up and down and hit it. And Ares didn't have anything to do with it. You can even ask him. I swear." "I don't want to hear it." Her tone sent shivers creeping down my spine. I had always admired her obsession with staying calm and collected, despite being faced with the possibility of losing her children every single day. She always made sure that I knew she loved me, despite being forced to put precautions in place. Now, however, my aunt didn't smile, tell me everything was going to be okay. M's bright yellow summer dress was still stained with my cousin's blood. Her half-lidded eyes were haunted, her head tipped sideways like she was sleepwalking. She didn't even look at the pile of dust and glass on my carpet. Instead, my aunt simply gestured for my cousin to follow her out of the room. I pretended not to care that she locked the door behind her. After almost losing my cousin, I chose to stay in my room, and to no surprise, my aunt was happy with me staying secluded. As I grew into a tween, this phenomenon only got worse. I became luckier, while the people around me were cursed. Since adopting me, my aunt had broken 3 fingers, electrocuted herself twice, and almost drowned in the bath. She had broken multiple phones, had to replace 6 television screens, and 3 separate light fixtures. However, apart from Jesse's accident when we were 8, my bad luck seemed to leave them alone. Still, though, my aunt wasn't taking any chances. I had to keep my distance, despite both of them arguing that whatever was wrong with me was sparing them. I mean, they were right. I accidentally hugged Jesse and nothing happened. I chased Jonas around the house playing "The Floor is Lava," and nothing exploded, blew up, or died. It looked like my cousins were safe. Aunt M, however, made sure to stay away from me. She made me promise that no matter what, I was leaving at 18, and once I left for college, I would no longer be welcome in the family. I have to admit, this fucking hurt, because I knew my aunt would force her children to sever contact too. I wanted to tell her that this wasn't my fault, and it wasn't fair that adults were blaming me for something I couldn't help. But I just nodded and smiled, grateful for her keeping me for as long as she had. School was surprisingly safe, at least until junior high. When I was 12, I stepped on a first edition Charizard on the playground. I bent down to pick it up, checking and rechecking the card to make sure, but it was as clear as day. The card was in perfect condition, like it had fallen from the sky. I was glued to the spot, excitement thrumming through me, clashing with a sudden nausea, twisting my gut into knots. Luck was usually followed with something bad happening. Several days earlier, I found a chip shaped like SpongeBob. Barely a second after sharing it with my cousins, my aunt dropped her brand new phone. That's when I started piecing together how it all worked, thanks to Jonas's hypothesis, proclaimed from the top of the jungle gym with his arms spread out like he was teasing fate. He was standing way too close to the edge for it to feel like a coincidence. Jonas pointed at me. "I've got it," he announced, teetering on the edge. I watched him feverishly. Jessie, who was sitting next to me, hiding behind her notebook. But either my cousin was way too good at keeping his balance or the entangled red thread had other plans. He grinned, triumphant. The luckier you get, the worse the bad luck is for someone else. Jonas blew a raspberry. Sue, if you find a quarter, maybe someone nearby will fall and, twist their ankle. His eyes darkened suddenly, his expression twisting. But Jonas straightened up, standing on one leg to test fate even further. Let's say you find $10,000 instead. He caught my eye, his lip curling. That's like a guaranteed death sentence. You'll be killing someone. Jonas, Jessie whisper-shrieked. You can't just say that. He rolled his eyes. It's true. Mom's been saying it since we were little kids. Jonas's words rattled in my skull, the card slipping through my clammy fingers. I stepped on it, stamping it into the ground in hopes of somehow burying the luck of finding it. But I couldn't erase the fact that I had found it. I was trying to tear it up, hysterical sobs building in my throat, when a scream rang out across the playground. I didn't move. I was too fucking scared to move, to breathe, to turn around. Behind me, Zoe had been practicing a cheer routine with 3 other girls. She was their flyer. When a cacophony of screams followed the first girl's shriek, I forced myself to turn around. Zoe was on the ground, her neck bent at a jarring angle, her eyes wide open, like she was still caught in a cheer. According to the authorities, Zoe had snapped her spine. But I knew the truth. Whatever this thing was had killed her. I shouldn't have been near her, and yet I was, playing with a fucking Pokemon card. I wanted to drop out, but my aunt refused to trust me at home during the day. At 15 years old, I scored a perfect 100 on an essay I barely paid attention to. My teacher, Mr. L, was skeptical after handing me my paper. "Congratulations, Eris," he said, passing by my desk, his voice oozing with sarcasm. "I will be checking your work for plagiarism because there is no way you scored perfect marks without even reading the book." He emphasized each word, prodding my unopened copy of The Crucible with a pointed finger. "You kids must think I was born yesterday." I was staring at my 100% mark when my teacher collapsed behind me. He suffered a stroke that rendered him brain dead. It hit me that I was indirectly hurting people, and I couldn't stop it. Out of nowhere, I was awarded early admission to a college that accepted me without explanation. When I got home, a gunman was holding my aunt and cousins hostage around our dinner table. He wanted cash, and my aunt was calmly leading him to her purse. I made the mistake of stepping over the threshold, and Aunt M's brain splattered on the table, the crack of the gunshot ringing in my skull. What confused me was that this was the first time I wasn't lucky. My aunt was dead, but for some reason, my luck was gone. Jonas screamed, his cry muffled by a strip of duct tape over his mouth. He was covered in his mother's blood, slick on his cheeks. The gunman grabbed my aunt's purse, stuck his revolver to the back of Jonas's head, and blew his brains out. Except no, it was a blank. The gunman tried again, pressing the barrel to my cousin's temple and pulled the trigger. Nothing. Click after click after click. Blank after blank after blank. Jonas surprised me, a hysterical giggle muffling through his gag. "Do it again," he teased, spitting the tape off of his mouth. My cousin leaned forward, as far as his restraints would let him. His eyes were wide, almost unseeing with the type of glee, of pleasure, an amalgamation of relief and agony, turning him into what I imagined a god would resemble. Jonas didn't believe in death, because of what I did to him. I think it was a mixture of adrenaline and excitement that made him wink at me. "Do it!" He shook his head, his expression twisting and contorting, his mother's blood staining his cheeks. I don't think Jonas could feel it. Feel her? I don't even think he could see his mother's corpse slumped in her chair. His eyes were wide and unseeing. "Shoot me again! Fucking shoot me!" He was laughing, reveling in the fact that at that moment he was untouchable. The gunman did, crying out in frustration. He gave up, pivoted on his heel, and shot the wall, a bullet piercing through a photo of the three of us standing 6 feet apart. Then he shot Jessie, who squeezed her eyes shut, letting out a wet-sounding sob. I heard the gunshot, but again there was no bullet. The guy stumbled back, my aunt's purse slipping from his fingers. What the fuck? He held the barrel to his own temple for a fraction of a second, like he was going to try on himself before clarity hit. "You're all fucked," the man whisper-shrieked, making a break for it, which left me alone with my cousins who didn't speak. I tried to untie them, but Jonas spat at me to stay away from him. Yet, in the same breath, he told me to stay close. I didn't know what to tell them, because Aunt Em's death wasn't the only thing eating away at me. There was a girl walking really slowly toward me, stalking me. I first noticed her at Em's funeral. She was covered in bird shit, long, dark brown hair scorched from her head. It was almost like she'd been struck by lightning so many times that it turned her into a beacon. A beacon covered in blue, stringy, vine-like burns stretching across every inch of her. Her clothes hung in ragged tatters, jeans and a t-shirt clinging to her skeletal frame. I didn't think anything of her until she shot me a crooked grin, and I threw up halfway through the ceremony. That wasn't something that happened to me. I thought it was just unusually warm weather, but then I kept going hot and cold, shivering. I had never been sick, never suffered from illness. I figured I was just coming down with the flu for the first time. I thought I was hallucinating her, but the closer she got straying in the shadows, the sicker I felt, until I had to go back to my car. I puked 3 times, each time more painful, each time filled with maggots wriggling between my teeth and skittering on my tongue. Jonas came to check on me, and from the look on his face, wide eyes, a strained attempt at a smile, I wasn't hallucinating. I didn't realize I was having a panic attack until my cousin forced me to tip my head back so he could tweeze the maggots from my throat with a pair of scissors. I couldn't understand his gentle features. He didn't hate me. His mother was dead, and Jonas somehow didn't despise me. "There's someone following me," I spluttered out once the remaining bugs had been extracted, and Jonas's head found my shoulder. I thought he was asleep, but then he jerked, twisting toward me. "Wait, what?" His eyes were wide, lips curled. "What do you mean someone's following you?"